Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Women in Tech, Accelerating Action. I'm Jenny Herbison, and I lead marketing at Exclaimer. I've worked in tech for over 15 years, and throughout my career, I've seen firsthand the incredible impact women have had in shaping this industry. But I've also seen and felt the barriers that continue to hold us back. Women have been at the forefront of tech innovation for centuries, from Ada Lovelace, who pioneered computing, to Mira Murati and Fei Li, who are shaping the future of AI. Yet despite these contributions, the tech industry still has a long way to go in achieving true gender equality. Today, women make up 28.2% of the global tech workforce. And at the current pace, full parity won't be reached until 2158. That's far too long to wait. At Exclaimer, we believe that technology thrives when everyone, regardless of gender, has the opportunity to lead, innovate, and make impact. Diversity isn't just about representation. It drives better decision-making, smarter solutions, and stronger security. Creating a more inclusive industry benefits all of us. But progress requires more than conversation. It does require action. That's why today, in honour of Women's History Month and International Women's Day, we're embracing this year's theme, Accelerate Action. We're here to discuss not only the challenges that persist in tech, but also the tangible steps we can take to foster inclusion, remove barriers, and create opportunities for everyone. We have an incredible lineup of speakers today who will be sharing their experiences, insights, and strategies for driving meaningful change. We have Laura Probert, who's Exclaimer's Chief People Officer. We have Maria Gerkas, Director of Product, and Lynn Foster, Head of Engineering, as well as Rob Singer, our CEO. During today's discussion, we'll cover how the tech landscape has evolved for women and where opportunities for progress remain, how companies can create workspaces where device and talent thrives and lead, what Exclaimer is doing to support and advance equity in tech, actionable steps you can take to accelerate real, lasting change in the industry. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, we want this to be an interactive session. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat at any time, and we'll get to as many of them as we can during the session. Now let's get started. Firstly, I want to come to Maria and Lynn. So we'll start with you. Can you share what initially drew you to your career in tech and what keeps you passionate about the industry today? Lynn, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you. So my career path has been anything but linear. I actually fell into tech about 10 years ago, and it wasn't necessarily intentional, but what I have been intentional about since then is staying in this industry. There are so many things that keep me passionate about the tech industry, but fundamentally, it's the ever-changing technology landscape, the interesting challenges that brings, and also the incredible people who work in this industry.
I agree 100%. It's the people that you meet in the industry, and this is a very broad industry as well. You have so many different nuances, and throughout my career, I had a pleasure of working with some extremely talented people. So yeah, I'd say that having an opportunity to meet them and sometimes to work alongside fellow techies is very inspirational, and I find it extremely elevating and also and defining what I want to do next. My journey was very much actually influenced by my mom, who has a degree in computer science, and ever since I was little, I knew that I would follow in her footsteps, and that's exactly what happened. So from the age of 10, I started to learn how to code, and after that progressed into my university. And right after university, or actually during my third year of uni, I already started working in product management. And so here I am now leading the product team at Exclaimer.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Obviously, you talked a bit there, Maria, about how beginning to code at an early age, and Lynn, I'm sure you were the same. We do still see that that female representation in STEM jobs. Although it's grown from 8% in 1970 to 28% in 2019, it's still low, with women accounting for only that 21%. Three of who've actually earned that bachelor's degree in computer and information science and engineering. Do you feel that when you were starting out, did you feel that you were in the minority, and how did that feel? Marie, I'll start with you. You talked a little bit about coding from an early age.
Yeah, at the time, of course, I didn't realize that, that women are so underrepresented in everything tech related. It was only until a couple of years back that I actually realized that even in the first lessons that I ever took, I was the only girl in the room. I was very often the only girl at the conferences, the student conferences that I participated in some of those sessions, and it felt a little bit isolating. Yeah, I'd say. I never had a strong example back when I was little, and I'm so glad that women and little girls these days have so many, so many examples to look up to and to hear the stories of success, and not episodically, but also that we're having this conversation at this very large scale, right? That this is normal, that this is something that you can expect almost in today. And so that's why I'm remaining hopeful that that every girl from now on is not gonna be the only girl in the room.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think we are seeing that things are improving, like you mentioned, Jenny, around obviously those statistics increasing, but it's still, I wouldn't say where we should want to be. No one should be happy with where we've gotten to right now. But I think generally speaking, opportunities for women in tech, they have improved, but there's still so many challenges that we need to overcome. Women are still very underrepresented in leadership roles. Barriers like unconscious biases in hiring and promotions are still very prevalent. I think there's definitely greater awareness of these issues, but I think real systemic change requires continuous effort. So things like, flexible working policies, better parental leave policies, not just for mothers, but for fathers too. So allowing women to return to their careers faster, equitable career development and sponsorship, right? So not just mentorship. So to me, I think real progress isn't just about like a single thing. It's about creating inclusive cultures where all women are fully supported and feel valued and heard.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Laura and Rob, we've been talking about gender equality in tech for like a long time, for both of you as well. You've both been in leadership roles in companies for a long time as well. Laura, I'll come to you first, if that's okay. Why is increasing that diversity in tech, especially supporting and advancing women, so critical priority for companies right now?
I mean, I think it's not just for tech, it's across kind of every industry, really, isn't it? I think the reason tech is so much at the forefront is there are so few women in tech. And you said, was it 28.2%? I mean, that's significantly lower probably than any other industry. Obviously, I'm in an HR space where it's the other way around. It's predominantly female. So I think it's more exacerbated in tech. But I think there's a few things to think about. I think we know that it's morally right to have gender equity and equality, and we kind of all know that, and everybody should have the same opportunities and chances in whatever industry they choose. And I think our job has been trying to level that playing field, but also it's the right thing for business. And there's so much research out there to prove and show that businesses that do have gender diversity and equity are significantly more successful. So not only is it morally right, but it's commercially right as well. And we're creating products for men and women, so we should theoretically reflect the customers and the people that we're serving. And so if we create products only made by men for men and women, that's not going to pan out well, is it? It's not going to be considerate of the diversity of our customers, for example. So I think we have to reflect the industries and also the people and our customers as well.
Great, thank you. And Rob, you're here as well, and we'd love to hear from you about why this is so important for you as our CEO.
Of course. I mean, to echo a big part of what Laura was just saying, that, you know, I've spoken about this in a number of forums here, that like having a diverse team produces better results, and it's just clear, and it's non-disputable on that, and it creates a more vibrant workspace, all of those things that are in place. I do think that going, you know, kind of even hitting into the women in tech side of it and why it's so important right now. One, a bit of what Laura was saying has really, like, I think honestly what I'm hearing, especially from like Lynn and Laura, like so much of this has been systemic. And that's why it's so important now, is this is not a wave the magic wand and the problem goes away. Like, this is something that we need to fix systemically, because there are systemic problems. And I do think that areas like gender stereotyping, all of that has sort of even led into this divergence of career paths and the rest of it. And the last thing I'm going to say, like, I think right now, part of the reason why like I am so passionate about it is I am hearing so much converse of it right now. It is scaring me to death.
Marilyn, I'm going to come back to you guys again, if that's all right. And we've talked about some stats at the start there, and you know they are going in the right direction, not as quickly as we would want, but because the progress does remain slow. From your perspective, how have these opportunities for women in tech evolved since you have started your careers?
Lynn, let's start with you.
I think they have evolved. I think that, you know, to Rob's point, I think that we're talking a lot more about it. You know, that awareness is coming through. I think that we also have a lot more access to all of those, you know, conversations that are happening compared to, you know, when I was younger. So I think that, you know, those opportunities, I think that women, in equal measures, you're seeing all of the bad things, you know, but equally you have an opportunity to see all of the good things as well. And I think that generally speaking, we are moving in the right direction. But like with anything in history, sometimes, you know, you take one step forward and then comes a wave of taking two steps back.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're going to continue on this path, on this journey where we're going to make some, you know, advancements, and then we're going to get probably some steps back. So I think that it's really important to, I think everybody collectively has a responsibility to keep these conversations going all the time, because otherwise it so easily just slips into the background, and our voices collectively need to be much louder than the voices of the few, right? Like your Mark Zuckerbergs. Completely. Yeah, I agree. You know, his megaphone is massive. But I think that collectively, you know, strength in numbers, we can fight back.
Amazing. Maria, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, of course, I agree with everything that Lynn said. And I also want to say that the fact that we are having this conversations, and that we are now in the position to convey this message to the people joining our teams, our companies, that is what makes a huge difference as well. When you join a company that is already so, I don't want to say advanced even, but it's like so normal when it comes to having female coworkers, regardless if you're in a more product and tech department or not, right? It just gives you an opportunity to see that, yeah, this is indeed something that I don't even have to worry about. I know that I'm going to be supported here as a woman, or if I identify myself as a woman, because it is a very open and safe space. And finding the people that drive this change and working closely with them, getting their bits of wisdom, their thoughts as your, and maybe even having them as your mentors. I would say that's what really strikes me as the biggest change that I've personally felt in this past 10, 15 years of my professional career. Because from the very, when I started, and again, I was very underrepresented. And in my first company, I was actually the first female hire for a technical role, even though it was a 150 people company. So you can imagine my awe when I wasn't that. And I don't think it's ever going to happen. So with this, right, where we are now, with not just on the executive team, at the product team, where we have a lot of women in our engineering teams, actually at every dev squad, I think there's at least one person who identifies themselves as a woman. So that is the change that I think makes the biggest difference.
It's amazing. It's great to hear about that psychological safety you just talked about there, Maria. And I think that's the thing. And you can be truly yourself and not judged anymore. I remember 20 years ago when I first started a job, getting trained I was salesperson at the time, and getting trained on how to get rid of some of those more female aspects. So being taught not to play with my hair and doing different things. And now I just think that just shocks me so much that was something that I was trained to be that more masculine. Whereas now I can be my authentic self, and I think that makes a real difference as well. I can, be who I am and not have to change who I am to fit into the workplace as well. So thank you both so much for that. Laura, I want to come back to you if that's okay. There has been a lot of progress. That's great. But what do you still see as the biggest barriers still holding women back?
Well, there's one word, and it's the patriarchy. I mean, it just is, isn't it? The world is set up in a way that isn't for women, and that's not me bashing men. The patriarchy is all of us. We all create that. I think so. I've been through. I've been in HR for 25 years, and so I've been on quite a few of these kind of women's programs and talked on International Women's Day events and so on. And if I look at how things have progressed, I would say that maybe 5-10 years ago, we were seen as the problem. We were seen as lacking confidence, resilience, maybe a bit flaky because we have kids and we might have to go and pick them up, and being primary carers. And I think we've been kind of gaslit for such a long time, and it's been ingrained in us that it's us, and we just need to just be a bit more confident or speak up, or we need to negotiate a bit harder on pay rises, or we need to go for jobs that we don't feel 100% confident we might get. Just actually no, the problem isn't with us. We're absolutely fine. We need to change the parameters around us. We need to change the way we do things in the workplace so that everybody has an equal footing. And that if that's the one thing I think my own personal experience is, that stop thinking about yourself as the problem. And start to think about how to change the structures within an organization. I'm lucky enough to be in a role where I can do that. And I'm lucky enough to have a CEO who empowers me and other women to do that in the organization. So, we're not the problem.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more with that. It's amazing. Thank you, Laura. Rob, would love to know from your perspective as CEO, the role that executives play, men and women, in driving meaningful change for gender equality in tech.
Yeah. First thing is, Laura, not only are you not the problem, you're the solution as far as I'm concerned. But what I heard you saying, Laura, what I've heard you saying, all of you, but very specifically you and Lynn, like going back to something I mentioned earlier, this is systemic. Like, these are systemic problems, whether they are policies that we'll even give it the benefit of the doubt that have inadvertently stemmed or staunched the careers of women, the sort of gender roles that we expect people to play don't play with it. Like, oh my gosh, if I had longer hair, I'd be playing with it right now. But these are systemic, and these are the things that when you change those, you can actually make change. It's a lot of things that you say are words. A lot of the things that you can create the illusion of change pretty easily, but actually getting in there and making the fundamental change is where you roll up your sleeves and do the hard work. And I do think that, to Laura's exact direct point, like, we're lucky we're in positions where we can actually really affect that change as execs. We set the policies, we can set how we want to think about those sort of things. I'm going to just put out the call to it right now. Come to us. We don't have all the ideas, but we definitely have the ability to implement things and make sure that they get implemented. And so one of it is that making sure that we have the right policies, procedures. We start to tear down some of these insidious things that have existed throughout time. Two is we haven't, sort of what we were talking about with the megaphone, we have a disproportionate voice in our values and how we do things, and calling out bad behaviors is critical.
Absolutely.
As an exec, when you do that, it actually opens up the ability for other people to feel comfortable doing the same thing. We have got to model these behaviors, and I think that is when we do so, it is very, very powerful. The last thing I'll say on this, and Jenny, my guess is you and I can be aligned as marketers on this. A lot of it, though, is controlling some of this message. And that is when I hear things like the Trump administration, oh, it's a DEI hire, that's why a plane crashed. That is the insidious things that undermine actual work and actual progress, and it's all bullshit. But that doesn't mean we can't play by the same rules. Fine. How we communicate, how we talk, and more importantly, how we show up every day is going to be critical in that. No, that's bullshit. This is actually the truth, and this is how we view things. And then when we put actions to our words, it makes them stronger than all the lies and all the crap that's kind of floating around out there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Rob. I think one of the most powerful things I realized was happening was before, when there were bad behaviors that weren't ideal from men, they would be quietly exited from a business. It was like, that was the way it was. And I think something that in my last company that was done was there were a very senior male was exited, and we went to the company and we said why, and we said those behaviors were not okay. And that was so powerful. You talk about that communication, and it was that most powerful moment because it gave that psychological safety and trust to women in the workplace that they could speak up and their voices could be heard. And I think that is exactly what execs do, is that we don't just say something, we have real meaningful action, and we show it and we live by it. And I think that makes a really big difference to give that safety to women, to then progress in their career. Which leads me on nicely actually to Maria and Lynn. I'm going to go back to you both again. You're both got senior roles, in product and engineering. But I'd love to know, and Maria, maybe start with you on this one. What challenges did you face, with that journey, and how did you navigate them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for that. I think as we all rightfully already mentioned, it hasn't been an easy path for nobody. Of course, it all depends on the company by company, but a lot of the same situations I think we all felt, with some casual jokes that maybe are made about you being a girl and everybody else is focused on work while you probably want to go, run away and have a family at some time. So, what's wrong with that? The challenge of being, I'd say, too vocal about something, too real. Yeah. What if it doesn't fit into the image of a working woman that everybody's used to? Yeah. What if I want to show my vulnerable side and want to be who I am as a person, not necessarily this corporate persona that this facade that sometimes we use as a defense
Yeah.
in lots of situations, or even something I had to experience a year and a half ago when I found out that I was pregnant. How can I bring this news into my workplace? How do I communicate it to my, at the time, male manager? Am I gonna get laid off because of it? Can this happen? I don't know. This was my first time experiencing this, and of course, it was only until later when I realized that, of course, it is protected by law, so legally that can happen. And at the end, it actually turned out to be quite a nice experience and a nice conversation that I had. But I'm not gonna lie, I was very nervous to even be talking about something like this in the workplace. So yeah, I think it's there's no universal answer to this question. It's gonna very much depend on a journey to journey. And Lynn, I would actually love to hear from you if there was anything similar to what I've just described.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of that resonates with me as well. A lot of sexist comments, right, being shrugged off as jokes. I think that you'd be hard pressed to find any woman in not just tech but business, I think in general, who hasn't experienced something like that, unfortunately. I think the reality is that most of the things that stop women from advancing in their careers are things that we wouldn't actually know about if they happened to us, like not being hired for a role or not getting that promotion because we're a woman, right? But some of the challenges I think that I face directly is consistently being the only woman in the room. I think I was in a call a while back, and I think that there were 14 people on the call, and I had to take a screenshot of it because I was the only woman on that call, and only non-white person as well on that call. And that shouldn't be okay. So just having that lack of representation, that lack of diversity, particularly lack of representation in leadership roles. I think as well, looking back in my career, I think I can pick many points as well where I felt like I've had to speak up more loudly because I'm in a room as the only woman, so that I'm actually listened to. Those kind of things are some of the challenges that I faced. In terms of like navigating those things, I think that for me, one of the things that my mom actually told me when I was younger was remember that you belong wherever you are. Remember that you belong. So that's something that I tend to sort of tell myself whenever I'm feeling a little bit unsure, and making sure that I stand up for myself, and also others around me. So if I'm in a meeting and there's somebody, a man talking over a woman, for example, I'll make sure that I point that out, make sure that there's space made for her to speak, and I think that's really important, particularly as a woman in a leadership role. And going back to like the mentoring and the sponsorship, I always make sure that I mentor and sponsor women as much as I possibly can to ensure that more women have opportunities to progress in their careers. So yeah.
Absolutely, Lynn. I think that there was a phase I remember where women were almost pitted against each other, and then there was a moment where it shifted, and women really fought for each other and came together and protected each other. And I totally agree with what you're saying in that. And suddenly those jokes that you and Maria have just talked about, those little jokes that suddenly we called people out on those. And, if we saw, I remember seeing a senior person at one of the companies I worked at, saying or doing things, or I remember hearing a story about someone, like a senior man asking a woman to make them a cup of tea, things like that. And actually another woman walked over and went, no, the CEO makes his own tea, so can you, and I think that was the real shift I saw. I really like that you've called that out, where women actually started to come in and support each other in that. And I think, there's other things that, as we can put in place, making sure that everyone in the room is heard. There's, as, leaders in the business, that's, when we've experienced something, what I'm hearing from you both is that you then put in place things then that can support everyone to be heard, men and women, which I think is really great as well. What skills would you both say then are essential for women trying to break into tech? Like obviously the journey we've heard, you've been through this journey, you were probably more in the minority. So is there anything that women can do then to support them breaking into these roles that you're in?
I
And
can start.
yeah, go ahead, Maria. Great.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just gonna say, speak up about what matters. I would say is one of the best piece of advice that I heard when I was back a teenager. If you do believe in something and you want to be heard, just speak up. Yeah. So say what's on your mind and don't feel threatened by other bolder voices in the room or something. I think that it's very applicable at various stages of your career when you're just starting out and you don't know, and maybe actually the thought you just had may be what nobody else thought of. Maybe it's going to bring some fresh perspective and it's going to help drive a change or make a decision. And very much at leadership level as well. Perhaps your area of expertise is something that other people lack, and you can shed the light and try to look at the situation or at the particular case from a different angle, and that will help. So um, I'd say from the soft skills, that would be my number one choice. And in terms of hard skills, and especially around everything tech and product management related, I'd say it's actually doing the homework. Your skills, your technical skill set is what's going to speak on your behalf. So invest your time in knowing the basics and learning the ropes and do actually spend time at honing those skills from whether it's learning a new coding language, right? Something that you're passionate about. If it's learning a new framework and product management and staying up to date with how to roadmap, for example, because there's so many different versions of how you can do it. So learn them, see what works for you, and find more opportunities to apply those skills and make success stories out of them.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lynn?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think in an ideal world, women would only need the same skills as men to
Yes.
break into tech, right?
Yeah.
So, but the reality, still remains that women often have to work harder and develop skills that men don't typically need to. And some of those things I'm thinking about there, we mentioned it earlier, like resilience and confidence. You mentioned earlier, Jenny, that women only make up less than 30% of the workforce in tech. So imposter syndrome is going to maximize massively, right? When you are
Yeah.
constantly in that position where you're reminded that this industry is so heavily male dominated. But that actually already starts before women even become employed in the tech industry. We've spoken about it a little bit earlier, but just to put some figures around it. So in the current academic year here in the UK, women only make up 19% of the people studying computer science at university, for example. So, we can see there very clearly that more has to be done. But I'd say as well, other skills like negotiation and self-advocacy, they're really, really important because knowing your worth and advocating for yourself will help you with things like, securing the right salary when applying for a job or later in your career when you're asking for a promotion. So those are all really, really important skills that I would encourage all women to hone in on.
I would absolutely agree. I think the pay gap, we know there's a pay gap, and you do wonder if a lot of that was down to, women just not having the confidence, wanting to maybe fly below the radar a little bit as well, years ago when they were asking for pay. And I think that's where, and it brings me on to my next topic nicely, actually, Lynn, where, Exclaimer has done some really intentional moves to create a more inclusive workspace. And is there any, I want to come to everyone actually on this one. I can start with Laura, but positive shifts that we've seen at Exclaimer that supports diversity in tech. Full disclaimer, Laura, Rob and I are probably more new to the company. So Lynn and Marie, you can probably talk more to what you experience as some of those moves. And then Laura and Rob, we could talk about what else you would like to see as well. So, we'll probably start again with you, Lynn. Actually, is there something that they've brought in that you think is a really positive thing at Exclaimer?
Yeah, I mean, just piggybacking off of what Maria shared about her personal story and obviously welcoming a beautiful baby girl last year. But women are, statistically the primary caregivers in their families, right? So it's been reported that almost 40% of women who left the technology industry and cited caring responsibilities as a key factor in that decision. So, we are losing women from this industry rapidly. So one of the great things that I tell everybody about who will listen to me is our remote work policy and also our work from anywhere policy. That provides greater flexibility and access to career opportunities for women here at Exclaimer. So yeah, and going back to Rob's point, making sure that these things are written in policy. It's not something that is kind of up to manager discretion or anything like that, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah, because then it's not just caring for children, it's caring. There's also statistics out there that show that women actually have to also care for parents as well. So like not only do they have to do childcare and then at a separate time. Yeah. Maria, what about yourself on anything that Exclaimer you find to support you?
Yeah, thanks. I would actually love to go back to the example of becoming a mother and how that journey was for me. So, as I've already sort of said, first I was kind of scared to see what happens, but I was pleasantly surprised how with the reaction that I got, not just from my direct manager, but from my coworkers and people on the executive level as well. Everybody was very supportive, and I really felt like, okay, I am going through a huge transition as a person, as a woman, and I am going to be becoming a mom and have to give birth, and will have my first baby now, but I don't have to make that black and white choice of am I a professional, am I the director of product Maria, or am I mommy Maria? I can actually be both, and I have to say, like, without sugarcoating it, at around 8 months old, when I was 8 months pregnant, I went on my maternity leave, and that was also a great decision that my coworkers and my team members supported. And right after giving birth, I just felt very connected to everything that was still happening at work. I never had I know I had my space, and I was, enjoying my time now with my family, but I still remained in contact with some of people from work because I wanted to, and everybody welcomed that. So my transition back into working was pretty smooth too. So it's now been 6 months since I'm back, right? And I think some of you will say it feels like I never left. So that tells you a little bit about how much Exclaimer supports young moms.
Yeah, and I think recently, obviously, we had product offsite, and everyone went to Berlin. I think I thought that was just an amazing thing that support you got, Maria, was to make sure that you were still included, so you could still be near to your family. And I think those are the really meaningful things that companies can do to really support women during the different life phases that they're going for. And your baby is so cute as well. I love seeing. Laura, I'd love to come to you on what more can be done. We've heard some great examples from Maria and Lynn, but what more can be done?
Yeah, I just want to kind of add to what they both said with the fact that they have a phenomenal female chief technical officer, Vicky Wills. I am sad to say that she's the first female CTO that I've ever worked with, and she is phenomenal. And so having that at the top of your that person at the top of your function, how inspiring that must be for all the females in that area. So I just want to call her out. It'd be lovely to have her on the call as well. And I don't think she could make it, but she is
Can I just jump
amazing.
in here really quickly? Because I just want to share actually on that topic that was one of the main reasons when I was applying for jobs that I ended up picking Exclaimer over the other companies that I had because of Vicky and the opportunity to work with a female CTO because it's the first time for me as well. And so that just shows like how important that representation is because it definitely matters. Sorry,
Yeah.
I just wanted to
No,
mention.
don't be sorry
great.
at all. That was great.
Yeah, she's so inspiring. So seeing more women like that at senior levels, and obviously we have people from her team on this call. It's a very inspiring team. I think what could we do better? I think the first thing I would say is that we're talking about 51% of the population. We are not a homogenous group. We're all we're different, and I think the approach I always try and take is to get feedback first, because I could go, oh, this is what women want because I'm a woman and I know, and this is what other organisations are doing, so let's just do that. But actually, we have just gone out with a survey and we've asked our people across the organisation what they want, what they need, what could be better, and we can cut and dice that feedback by our female population and ask, and see what they want, and then follow that up with deeper discussion around this topic to really get under the skin. Because I think if you listen to people and then you reflect back what it is that they said they wanted, I don't see how you can go wrong if you do that. It's just impossible to fail if you do that. So I think that's our methodology anyway, in our organization, is asking people and reflecting back what they've asked for. So I think another thing I think is something that I don't see anywhere. And in fact, I coach and mentor people pro bono, women, and I've mentored a few women and coached a few women in big tech companies, the top name companies. And it staggered me how many of them, they aren't allowed to do part-time work. Then those roles are just not available. And they've come back from maternity leave and said, actually, I'd really like to work 3 or 4 days a week, or I'd like to do this. And the answer is a flat no. And these are our top leading global tech businesses who are supposed to be really kind of innovative and leading the way in so many arenas. And that for me is kind of a form of discrimination in itself, because so many women, as you say, are primary child carers, also primary carers in general, are not able to flex their time. And so I think that's a really big one that I think we should see more organizations offering part-time work, job sharing, and things like that.
Thank you so much. And Rob, I just want to come to you about this as well.
Yeah.
But, the role that men play as allies in advancing, what are the practical ways that male leaders can actively support gender equality? What more can we do at Exclaimer for that?
Yeah. So it's actually a number of things. And I do think that one of the biggest points that we need to always make is allyship isn't about like being supporting from the sidelines. It's about actively influencing. And I think that not everyone really understands that actually being an ally means you're jumping in and you're part of the discussion. And we've talked about a couple of things already, which is calling out bad behaviors as they happen is critical. And that is something that is easier said than done, and do it. Model it. Don't let these things happen. Don't let them fester that way. I think that like another one, something we haven't talked about, is unconscious bias. And I think that making sure everybody's getting trained on that, and But forget that. Making sure you get trained on that. Like,
Yeah.
you want to be an ally. You actually want to like be engaged in this, be engaged in it. Go get yourself unconscious bias training. Get a book. Go to
Yeah.
YouTube. Like, one of the things I had written down here when we were talking about things that we as a company could do more, like ways of working and meeting norms are huge things that could really help make sure that everyone's voices are heard around the table. One thing, both Maria, you, and then echoed from you, Lynn, that you had mentioned, you said it very strongly, Lynn. You said that the idea, Maria, then Lynn, is like, we need to be, when do we get to a point where people get hired on their merit and their skills? And I do believe that there are some innovative things that we could be doing around resume blinding, around blind interviews, where you don't actually know what the human being on the other side of a resume or an interview looks like. So you can start to remove some of the unconscious bias that is there. And then, like I said, I do think that looking at the data is critical. Like, is there pay issues? Do we have the right equity across all of that? But I do think that the biggest things for me are making sure that we really think about how voices are heard around a table, and we are very clear about how we want to run everything from meetings to discussions to any of those things. Being a very strong ally, we cannot allow bad behaviors to exist or fester or go, even under the assumption that like people have positive intent or they just don't know they're doing it. Correct it, give them a chance, like all of that. And then the last thing I'm going to say, and I I'm not sure how comfortable I should be saying this. So if Jen, if you need to edit this out, like, because I don't want it to come across the wrong way, which is, this is a call for all for the males out there to actually like listen to what is here and do things. So one of the things I was going to say, but it's really small, is that I've had a number of people ask me why I'm not typically available before 10 a.m. for meetings, and that's because I take my kids to school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm not missing that. Like, that's like, I don't just say that I'm the CEO of a company. I need to make sure that like I'm like, I prioritize the things for my children. And the more we all do that, the more that sort of the stats around those things start to shift and change. We own that. We control that. We can talk about it all day. We can admire that problem all day. But you're male, you're listening to this, do something about it. Like, actually lean in and do it. Last thing I'll say onto that, Maria, because like you kind of like hit it right through my heart when you were talking about your fear when you found out that you were expecting, I'm pregnant and I need to go have this conversation. Like, coming from where I was on, especially in the West Coast of the US, like many of the companies I work for, we created policies that not just had equal maternity and paternity leave, but was forced. Like, again, these are the systemic things you do to break down. Like, no, like, why should you be the only one that feels that way? Like your partner should also be like, like it should be celebrated by everybody. No one should be having those fears. And when you share that across, it's suddenly like, we just need to be a lot more thoughtful onto all of those things. So sorry.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that. We are coming to just the last part of this session from a timing point of view. So I just want to look to the future now and very quickly go just round the panelists. And, you know, we'll start with Lynn, if that's okay. What's the one thing you'd love to see change in the next 5 years if we're looking forward?
Yeah, I think for me, really, it's early education and grassroots pipeline development. I think getting girls interested in STEM at younger ages and providing those really strong role models that help sustain their interest in tech careers. Because I can't remember what report it is, but we see girls being interested in STEM up until the ages of, I think, is it 11 or 12 or something like that, and or 15, I think, and then it just drops off. So really focusing in on how we retain their interest there. And then once those girls young women enter the workforce, we need to make sure that we have, cultures and policies in place to retain them beyond entry level roles. So yeah, that's what I would love to see change.
Amazing. Maria, what would you like to see?
In the ideal version of the world, all of the openings that we have on our team, in the final round, in the very last stage of the interview, it will be all female. That's what I want to see. For all of the product manager roles, product analysts, product marketers, please. So that would be my ideal thing for the next 5 years. Let's see more women apply. Let's make tech exciting. Let's make email signature space more exciting for women and for especially women in product management. So yeah.
Great. And I suppose we can finish with Rob and Laura, and what's the commitment that Exclaimer can make for that change to happen in the future? Rob, I'll come to you first.
Sure. I mean, the commitment, you have my commitment that all of these things that we are talking about, and I really want to just hone in on the systemic, sorry, I think systemic's the right word, the systemic sides of it for right now, because I do think that that's the foundation, and you have my commitment, and I don't want to speak for her, especially since she's going next, but Laura and I we're pretty aligned on all of these things, that you have our commitment, my commitment, that we're not using words right now. We're looking at all of these systemic issues, and to the points here around how things like remote working, part-time working, all of these things, we are going to always be assessing and putting in the policies and the procedures to continue to erode those issues away. And the other thing I can easily commit to right now is, you send me your ideas, you want to talk about your ideas, any forum that you want to use of, here are my ideas of ways that Exclaimer can further erode those issues. You have a very, very open set of ears right here. I will absolutely listen and absolutely bring to the table and assess any of those ideas that come forward. So,
Amazing. And Laura,
I would finish off by saying we're committing to be bold.
yes.
And I think having, conversations with Rob about this, he's really surprised me with how bold he is and has been in the past. So I'm like, oh, this is exciting. It's like having permission to be bold.
yeah.
So I think, knowing Rob as a CEO, I think we can be bold with our gender equity strategy going forward.
Yeah, I think for me, male, female, we're all going through different things at different times and different phases. And I think one of the most powerful things was a male colleague actually really leaning in and wanting to know what it was like for me and listening. And I think that's, for everyone, I think, that's a really powerful thing, that we can just listen and understand and care enough. But that brings us to the end of the discussion today. I really want to say a massive thanks to the panelists. You were so honest with your insights and experiences, and I think that is so encouraging for us all. We've covered a lot here, from the progress that was made to the role of leadership and what we can do in that, and some actual steps that we can take to be more inclusive and supportive in the tech, and just equal. I think that's what we want. We just don't want special treatment. We just want to fit everything to be equal for everybody. But it doesn't end here. Real change happens when we turn this into action. So please keep that momentum up. Implement what you've heard. If you've heard anything that you think you can take away for advocating for that flexibility, those career growth opportunities, or being an ally in the organization. So stay engaged, and we invite you to follow what we're doing on LinkedIn for updates on how we are as a company culture. Connect with any of us on LinkedIn and continue that conversation if you want to. But please do share your thoughts and key takeaways using, hashtag Accelerate Action and tag us at Exclaimer. Please watch for follow-up resources coming to you from today's webinar recording and additional insights on how we support this going forward. Thank you so much for joining us today, and let's all work together to accelerate action for women in tech. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.